Well, hi everyone. We're back again with another episode of Strange Encounters Down Under. And tonight we're talking about strange creatures. And Ben, we certainly have plenty of strange creatures in Australia, don't we?
Oh, we certainly do. They're all over the place, and a lot of them are found in Parliament. As it happens, probably some of the strangest creatures of all are to be found in each state and in Canberra.
We won't go down that track. But anyway, like in Australia, we have some of the strangest creatures in the world, known strange creatures like the platypus that British scientists thought back in the late 18th century, they thought it was a hoax and that some punk had collected the bill of a duck and added it to like an otter or a mole's body or some other animal and then shipped it back to the UK.
I don't think you could even dream that up.
No, it's a very strange creature. And then we've got the Tasmanian devil that actually growls like, well, what we imagine a devil might sound like. A kangaroo that can't go in reverse. Kookaburra that makes the sound like laughing. The Tasmanian tiger that looks like a cross between a dog and a tiger and like, what's with that tail too? It's very strange, you know.
Well, that's right. They seem to keep popping up occasionally across roads, don't they?
They do. So we have some strange creatures. We have like the Tasmanian tiger is, well, it's not a cryptid. It actually existed. But we do have cryptids, and which are strange creatures that exist somewhere in the wild, but they're not recognized by scientific norms. So their existence is quite contentious. And we also, and they're just, you know, out and out weird creatures. There are out and out weird creatures that we're going to talk about tonight that don't even fit into the known crypto genre. So tonight we've got two guests who've had experiences with strange creatures who are joining us to share their experience. So let's get started with bringing our first guest in. Let's bring in, where are we? Let's bring in Barry Taylor.
Welcome, Barry.
Good evening. How are you both?
Very well.
That's good.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I was just saying pre-chat, pre-record that you look like you're in your man cave there. I can see all the different things you've got there.
Yeah, I should throw a blanket over myself there, shouldn't I? Yeah, well, this is quite my little work area. Yeah.
Right.
This is where all the genius happens.
The magic. It's the magic room.
Yeah.
So you've had some strange experiences that you're going to share with us. Why don't you start off with one? I've got to know. Well, anyway, I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, I have. Particularly during the 90s, there was a lot of UFO activity, and I was an avid sky watcher during that period of time, and one of the only people in Australia actually filming UFOs in the 90s, the early 90s, and video cameras were just coming to the commercial market. And I tried to film what I was observing under all circumstances. And unfortunately, the best ones that I observed, I was not able to film. And that includes some strange creatures that I saw. At a stage, I think it might have been about 1998, somewhere around there, 97, 98, there was UFO flaps happening all around the place. All around the world and in New South Wales, where I was living at the time. And I was writing my one and only book on the subject of my observations, UFO Down Under. And I'd take a break and go outside, because at that period of time I was smoking, and I was observed the sky while I was outside having a cigarette. And this particular evening, I had an in-ground pool about 25 feet long, and I'd stand at the end of that, which gave me an observation sort of north over the city I was in, and in my immediate surrounds. Anyway, there was a bit of ambient light there from street lights and houses just around me, and I was facing up along the length of the pool, and through the gap of the trees came this unilluminated object, but it was illuminated by the ambient light around it, and it was a boomerang shaped thing. It had, it was only about 12 foot above the ground, which is, 4 meters above the pool surface, above ground level. And I just laid my eyes on it, and it had scales like a reptilian, large scales like crocodile, not small scales like a snake or lizard, quite large size scales. And I looked up towards the pointy end of the boomerang formation to see if I could see eyes, a face, or anything that would identify some sort of living creature. And I didn't see anything like that. But what happened when I was observing up where the face would be, if there was one there, the actual creature, I'm calling it creature because it had awareness, and it came to have a look at me. And because I was, I was observing a lot of close contact with all sorts of stuff at that period of time, but this was something different. And it stopped over the end of the pool, so it was only like 15, 17 feet away from me. And it must have realized that I could observe it. I was watching it. I could see it. And it stopped and went a sideways movement like this, like that. And suddenly it just disappeared. And I had no indication that it took off in any direction. And I think it just switched off into invisibility. That's the only way I can explain it. Actually, when it did disappear, I just automatically spun around to look behind me, thinking it may have continued on its path, but I didn't see anything. So I'm pretty well convinced under, those split seconds of time that it switched into invisibility or into the environment like squid do and all that sort of stuff. They just change their camouflage in an instant, But, I did see I became more aware of these boomerang shaped objects, and it made no noise. I had no other sense of it being there, only my observation and what happened, what I explained. But I did hear a pulsing in my ear. It was sort of like an ultra subsonic. I think it would be subsonic, like the whale and the dolphins, they can communicate around the world by these very low, ultra low frequencies. And that's what I was hearing on a couple of occasions. And I observed on one occasion, one of these boomerang shaped objects was very pale illumination, like was self-illuminated, like there's a name for it, bioluminescence. And that's where that sound seemed to come from, where this animal was. So that might have been that type of creature that was making that ultrasonic low frequency sound that was basically inaudible to normal ear, but I could feel the pulsing actually on my eardrum, but not hear anything, but just feel the pulsing.
How long was that encounter? How was it, like a few seconds or a couple of minutes?
It was a good 30. Wait there. From go to O, probably 15 seconds. 15 or so seconds, but enough where I could get a real good look at it. It was so close, and I got a really sharp, good look at it. And there was different other types of creatures there. There was I named those boomerang shaped ones gargoyles, because they were creepy things in the dark of the night, you know what I mean? Because I never heard of them before. I've never heard of reports of them or anything. And I connected them associated with UFOs because there was UFO activity around. And the other small one that was around at the same time, I call about a football size shape, I call them interceptors. because they'd streak down and leave it's almost like a shooting star, a meteor coming in the atmosphere. But I saw them at close range, and they weren't meteors, because I know the difference between meteor. I've been sky watching for years, And another one would come in as if to meet it, to intercept it from a different angle, about 8-10 seconds after the first one. And I thought, did that come in and intercept that? So then my observations was, when I see that first streak, I would observe a little longer. And on numerous occasions, the other one would come in, and that's why I call them interceptors. They were football side, and one of them flew over a rooftop that fast, and I could hear it disturbing the air, like that. And it was that fast, I only caught the movement out of my right peripheral vision so fast, at about 10, 12 feet away from me, I couldn't lay my eyes on it, but saw it disappear out of my left peripheral, and I heard the noise. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, I've heard that before. 2 years earlier, I heard that sound and I couldn't see anything. And I was probably buzzed 2 years prior to that.
And was this, what time of year was this, Barry? Is it winter, summer, warmer weather, colder weather?
I've got the details of the dates all in my book, but there's a lot to remember, but
so going back to your description, where you called it reptilian, can you give us a bit more about that description?
Because it had scales.
Now, when you say scales, do you mean like fish scales?
No, like reptile scales.
Okay.
Reptilian.
Shingle lizard sort of thing.
Yes,
One of those shingle lizards.
I'm not too sure. It's like crocodile, they got one big scale there, and another one's attached to it, like with angles, like it wasn't like fish where they're all laid in like scales. These were patches of scales, like just look like a large reptilian skin, I'll put up a graphic. I got graphics of that I'll video.
And what about, what about the color?
Well, it wasn't, it was a dark color because it was only reflecting the ambient light around the area. So I don't know whether it was a dark green or dark brown or just pure black. I don't know, but it was like, it was just like the light was reflecting off the slight variation in the scales. That's why I could see it was large scales, like reptilian scales. It was just the way the light was reflecting off the surface of it. And I sort of got the feeling that maybe these things are living in the shadow of the earth, because you never see them in the daytime. I was looking daytime, and as much, because I had another type of object I had to try and observe and film if I can, because I'd love to be able to film this stuff and just show you this is what they look like, But unfortunately, I'd set cameras up on either end, and I had a bike helmet with a night vision camera screwed to it and the recording inside, and had a Nikon DSLR in my hand with external flash with it on, ready to just press the button. And no matter what I did and reposition the cameras, they would avoid the cameras. They knew what I was up to, So I just couldn't get a photo, unfortunately, but I got some very, very good observations.
And you, sorry, go on.
No.
And you said it was like a boomerang shape. Like how like the boomerangs like this, how thick was it?
I'd say it was probably, if that's about four inches, I see, 4-inch diameter, and the arms were slightly under 1 meter in length each. Oh. So the whole object was a little under a meter.
Almost the size of an eagle. Well, eagle sort of size when the eagles have their wings out, or bigger than that.
I think an eagle probably a little bigger, aren't they?
I suppose it depends on the eagle.
I don't like a wedge-tailed eagle. I've seen them up close. It was smaller than
a wedge-tailed eagle.
Yeah.
And was it in like a forested area, coastal area, urban area?
Urban, right in the
in
town. Like houses in a suburb.
So it's not like it's on the edge of a state forest or down by the beach. It's right in an urban zone.
Actually, we had some a couple of mates, we went out to one of the out into the forest, you know, out into the where they used to do the timber getters up in the mountains sort of thing further. And because I wanted to show them a bit of equipment that I had, you know. Anyway, we're trying that out. And one of these interceptors came down and checked us out and had a look at it. I didn't see it, but they saw it and explained it. And I said, well, that's what that was. They come and, because it was almost like we learned how to call them in, you know. And which is what they basically did. Over the clothesline, over the street, and, you know, like over the house next door, and just buzzed me. I have other stories where they spun around and buzzed around me. I mean, circled around me about a meter away from me and then took off, streak of light. But we're not talking about that one at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
but and I just think that they are prehistoric, possibly. I just got that feeling about them, and they possibly just follow the shadow of the earth. That's why nobody sees them in the daytime, I guess.
No sound? Was there no sound at all? Like
no sound when I saw them. They went up close over the pool, but it was that low frequency pulse is the only sound that affected my hearing, you know, like even though it wasn't an audible sound. It was like I could almost see it. I could hear it moving across from one place to the other in the sky. I couldn't see it, but I could hear the movement of it. I could almost pinpoint where it was because of the sound that was being affected on my ear. If you understand what I mean there.
Was it clear? Was it like clearly defined? It didn't have any sort of
clearly defined.
Yeah, not blending in and out of like a dimension or anything like that at all. Just as plain as a falcon, a car on the road.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, it was very clear because I was able to observe the reflection of the light off the off the surface of the object, the reptile's nature of its surface, the skin or whatever. But it didn't show any other protrusions and no face or eyes that I could discern. Or in the little drawing I did put eyes in it because I just brought it to life a bit because it was alive, you know. It was there for I don't know what, but I did see other boomerang shape type objects and they were different to that. There was a whole lot of things happening. It was just amazing, you know, and not all craft containing aliens. This is what brings them into the strange creature aspect. It's unless they're biological probes and they're self-replicating. Some of them, the orbs and that you see in Mexico in the Ibani, the big worm, they seem spitting out more orbs as if they're giving birth. And Story Musgrave, when he was orbiting the Earth, took a video of one of these worms in space, and it was the same sort of thing. They come down into our atmosphere and spit out these objects as if they're giving birth. And there must be thousands of them because some of those daytime events, there's hundreds of them in that one event. So there's lots of them. And I think that's what they were doing. Some of them, they're different colors. I've got video on my YouTube channel and observed them up very, very close to. And I call them space critters. They're an object within themselves. That they're not a craft with an alien in them. Don't seem to be. They seem to be more of a space critter. It's all strange stuff. It's all new, you know. Like if I could write an encyclopedia and 100% explain what they are, that'd be really good. But
well, these are the pathways we go down on Strange Encounters, you know.
I can only describe my observations and try and put it together in my mind, you know, like what is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not mundane encounters.
No, it's strange. You'll see a UFO, and the first thing comes to your mind, what is it? I mean, you know it's a UFO, but what is it? You know.
So you had another unusual experience with some sort of strange creature, haven't you?
I do, and this one is it's different to that one. Like about 2 a.m. in the morning, right? And the only light I got coming into the room is a street light out the front, and that's where the bed head is. And anyway, I get this when I tell this story, I just got the habit of pulling on my shirt like that, because that was what it was doing to the bedclothes over me, the sheet and the blanket over me. It was just continually pulling like that, and that woke me up. What's going on here? You know, like I'm awake, and this is continually pulling on my shirt. I'll stop doing that now, but. And I thought, well, there's no animals in the house. I wonder if it's a rat trying to crawl up the sheet, but it just doesn't seem to be that. It seems to be deliberately tugging on the sheet. So I thought, I'm thinking, okay, I got two ways to look at this, because it was just continuous. And I can look over very quickly and surprise it and see what it is, or I can look over slowly and might get a better look. And I said, oh, bugger, I'm going to look over quickly. So I looked over the bed quickly, and I saw a little critter about 5 to 6 inches high. I thought it had long hair down to the carpet, but later on we thought it might be a hooded creature, and it glided to about 1.5 meters away from the bed, and it disappeared in the thin air. It just glided. It didn't run or anything like that. I didn't see any arms or legs. It just glided and disappeared. I thought, what the heck is that? You know, and I think, what would have happened if I'd have just bent over the bed slowly and didn't frighten it? Would we have had communication of some sort, I wonder? You know, maybe I could have put my hand down and got on my hand and, hello, what's your name? You know, I don't know. You know what I mean? I would have done that if it was still there. I would have done that, because I wasn't afraid of it. It was, well, it was only 5 or 6 inches high, probably more 5 than 6 inches, I'd say. But anyway, next morning, I had a look where that thing disappeared, and there was no evidence of anything being there. So I went on with my day normally, and that afternoon, probably 4 o'clock or so, 4:30 or so, I came back into that room, and where that critter disappeared, there was a tuft of hair. Fiber. I won't call it hair, it's fiber. And it was just it was brown, tanny brown, and it was about that long when stretched out. That's about the height of the object, of the critter. And it had a crimp in it like wool. And I thought, maybe it's wool, you know. And I used to have sheep. I know what wool smells like and what wool looks like. It didn't smell like wool, but it had a crimp in it like wool. And I had a microscope, a laboratory microscope at the time, which I did have a close look under a microscope. And another feature of the fiber was it had a twisty bit, like it went from tan into black, but like a curl. It was like a curl, but the curl wasn't twisted or plaited. It was like when you wind 2 coil springs inside one another. It was like that. It was complicated how it was done. And I thought, now that doesn't look like it's come off a natural animal. So I put it under the microscope and ran my video camera on it, and I was able to video, you know, the fiber. And on the fiber, there was one bit of pollen, one piece of pollen. And I looked up on what shapes of pollen would they be, and that shape come from dandelion. Now, whatever that hair or fiber come from, picked up a dandelion pollen somewhere. So I looked up dandelion pollen, and they're one of the pollens that go at high altitude. One of the only pollens that go at such high altitude. And Galapagos Islands, the trees there are not actual trees, they're giant dandelion. And I thought that was very interesting too, you know, like dandelions the size of trees, and you only find them on the Galapagos Island, a rarity. But anyway, I sent that sample. I had a friend from South Africa visiting, and they took that sample back to a laboratory over there, which, you know, hard to find one in Australia at that time anyway. And it came back that it was rayon. It was a synthetic fiber. Now, I don't know the purpose of somebody making that fiber with those features just for a toy or a doll or something like that. I've never seen anything like that or heard of anything like that. The complication of the the spiraling hair one inside the other. You need some sort of technical machine to make that, and the crimp make it like, well, what's the purpose of that? You know, like just on something if it was a doll or a toy for a child. You know, it just didn't. None of it made sense. But to finish that story off, I had a A4 size white envelope where I had other physical evidence of unexplainable stuff in. That was my scientific stash, you know what I mean? And so I put this hair in an envelope into that larger envelope, and in my unit I slid it. I had a linen cupboard with a special spot where I slid that in, and I knew exactly where it was, and I knew it was safe. Anyway, a couple of nights after I put that envelope away, early morning, I could hear some rustling in that cupboard from the room. I was in the bedroom next door. I could hear the rustling going on in there, and I thought, what's that, a cockroach or something in there rustling away? I'm too tired to get up and check it out. I'll have a look in the morning, you know. So in the morning, I got up and had a look, and that envelope had disappeared out of a locked unit. I checked all the doors and windows. They were still locked. I locked it up pretty secure. Well, as secure it can be with locks. And somehow somebody or something got in there and stole that envelope. Now,
Wow.
how did they get in and out with an envelope and everything's still locked? And how did they even know it was there? And what it was?
Yeah.
That's part of the mystery, and I just can't figure that out, you know.
It's very...
I didn't tell anyone about it. It's not like the word got around or I put it on an email or anything like that. No, wait, nobody knew about it because it was, you know, that was part of in the process of being investigated, you know. And it disappeared.
Wow, that's interesting. And was it the same location as the first creature we discussed? It in the same area, or are we living in another place when that occurred?
That's another place, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah.
I actually bought the house that had the swimming pool where I saw the creatures, so I was able to make a bit of noise and put a bit of light around the place and do what I wanted to do, you know, because I was up late and making a bit of a noise. And yeah.
And that was the only time you had that encounter with that creature, with the tugging on your...
That I'm aware of, yes.
That you're aware, yeah.
I did, you know, when you're outside in the dark, you get that feeling someone's watching you. I had that one night, just before the creature event. And that one, and I said, something's watching me, you know, like, no. So my camera had night shot, was one of the first Sonys that had night shot. That's what I filmed most of my UFOs on. And so I turned it on the night shot. I scanned around the yard, and down the end of the yard, about that far off the ground, was bright eyes. And I just put it down to a cat. I don't know. It might have been that creature. I don't know. But I just had that feeling that something's watching me. And that's the only thing that was there that could have given me that feeling, you know.
And when you saw the creature glide off, what sort of feeling did that give you at that point in time? Was that what sort of reaction did you have?
I'm just amazed.
Yeah, so it was no fear or...
No. The only time I've ever had, while you're on the subject, only time I've ever had fear, or like adrenaline rush, that's all, and that's what I call fear, adrenaline rush, was when one of what I call rods of light or dark black rods. I called them that because they were thin, slightly bent boomerang shaped things, and they were up to 12 foot long, to about a meter or so long, the big ones. And one of them swooped over the roof of the house next door and come down, approaching me, and it had little LED type lights along the front edge, the leading edge of the wings, what I call wings. Anyway, I thought that thing was going to hit me. So I got an adrenaline rush, you know, like, oh, wow. And then because you'd just turn around to follow it and you'd lose sight of it very quickly because it was a black object in the night sky, you know. But I saw so many of those, and what they were too, I don't know. That's another type of critter. They were too small for to have aliens in them. And they seem to, you know, when a whale migrates, it gets all these sucker fish and all these other fish follow it along. That's why I got the feeling some of this stuff is, you know, when the armada of UFOs are traversing the universe around the solar system, tags on all these other little life forms that followed around, and I don't know, maybe the aliens use them to gather information, or.
Do you feel you're attracting them, Barry, or do you feel they're there anyway? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel that they're there anyway, but because of I'm letting them know I can see them, I've got certain procedures I do, what I'm not going into here, and they become aware that I'm aware of them, and that's when they come in and check out.
Yeah,
that's, you know, I got to the stage where I could go outside. I could feel whether there was going anything happen. You know, the environment was different. And I go out sometimes. There's only about a 1 month in 2 years where there was no UFO activity. It was almost every night. But this one night I went out and I thought, it's different tonight. There's doesn't feel like anything's going to happen. I waited. Nothing happened. I go inside and then come back out later, waited till about 1 o'clock, 1:30. Nothing, absolutely nothing. That was strange. It was so almost, you could feel the absence of, they're not there, you know. It's like a strange feeling, you know, like if you've got a crowded room of people, you've got a certain ambience. And when everyone leaves, you got, oh, that's different, you know. That's what it was like. It was like that.
The energy, the energy's changed or not present.
That's right. And I've had nights there when every dog in the neighborhood was barking. Like the environment was alive and there was stuff around, you know, like these things were around. And even the animals were reacting. And I've noticed that particularly one night. And I did a pan around with a video camera just to record the barking dogs in every direction.
Wow. Yeah. Is your book still available for purchase, or is that a rare find these days?
No, that's free download on issuu.com. Just search, if you put UFO Downunder, you'll see it there, and free download. I didn't want to make any money out of it. I just put the information out there, and just to get it in the, I did hard copies to get it in the state libraries and hard copies in the libraries.
Excellent. Yeah, well, check it out, folks, for sure.
Yeah. Take it in and have a look, because you'll read stuff in there that you won't read anywhere else. There was also disappearing dogs and disappearing cats. And I saw like one cat. I was working at night shift, and this cat ran along the back wall and then disappeared in thin air. Where'd that go? Anyway. And I was talking to a mate, I was telling him some of these stories that I was experiencing at the time, and we were standing out the back. We were the only ones there because the rest of the production line was gone inside and we weren't ready to go yet. So he was facing the building and I was just facing him with my back to the building. And he looks around me like this and he says, a blooming cat just ran behind that basket. There was just a basket along a wall. That's the only bit of debris or only thing that was there. I spun around and I said, well, come on, keep your eyes on it. We'll go over and we'll get it, you know, we'll suss it out. We went over there, moved the basket, nothing there. And me mate said, oh, come on, I don't believe that. You know, I said, well, that's what I've been experiencing. Yeah, you've done it too, you know.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
One particular night I was just laying down, going to sort of winding down, ready to go to sleep, eyes shut and everything. And there was a lot of activity around, and I ran this scenario through my mind. What if I was at work and this silver sphere came across the top of the rooftop and flew at low altitude over this creek that runs through the property at work? And I called out to a mate and we both watched it, you know, and then it sort of shot off. You know, I got a bit of aluminium and just shone it at it to let it know that we could see it. And then it just shot off.
Yeah, you know, wow.
The very next morning, that happened.
Yeah, right.
That actually happened. The only thing that was different is that I couldn't find the bit of aluminium to flash at it, but the whole thing played out in real life.
That's amazing.
And I just thought about that in my mind.
Very strange.
It's almost like a premonition.
I don't know.
Really?
Why did that come there and so close and enact the whole thing that I you know, the corona around it, everything was all there, was there to play out my thoughts.
I think it was a prompt to see if you would respond somehow, and then you did. So what does that say?
Yeah, what does that say?
When you told me that story, you just skimmed right over it, and I said, wait, just back up and back it up there, because you just said that you were, you know, musing about this story, and then it happened. Like he didn't get a precognitive thought. He was musing himself. I think he was being prompted to muse.
Yeah, I was constructing it step by step in my mind to make it a story, you know, like and I just thought, oh yeah, I'm just thinking about what if, you know, and then it happened the next day, very next day, with a witness. I called him out of the shed. What do you think that is? He says, it's a damn UFO.
Yeah.
Both watched it, you know. He went in to do his job because we lost sight of it. It was only going very slow, and it went behind, out of sight where we're standing behind a building blocked it a bit. So he went inside to finish his work, and I stepped out around the corner to see as long as I could, and it sped up and shot out to the east.
That's great. Thanks, Barry. We've got another guest. We've got Dr. Jem returning. So I'll just bring her in. So you're going to share with us about your strange experience that you had not too long ago, wasn't it?
Well, it was actually, we've worked it out probably about 3 years ago now. It was before COVID rubbish. So yeah, it was at the I've had to write it down because it's not easy to remember, the Ullaramaya retreat at Wamuran. And so it had a lovely view of the Glasshouse Mountains, and it's right up on the top of an escarpment. And it was 2 different cabins with a big deck area and a nice bath and everything all outside. And so we'd been sitting outside calling in the aliens, trying to get something to cook, because, you know, it was at least 180 degrees, well, probably more view. It was fabulous. And hadn't seen anything but lovely stars. So we'd gone back to bed, and we were just sitting inside because the mosquitoes had been eating us. And then for some reason, Steve got up and went outside, and he just shouted, "Oh, there's something here. Come and see this. It's a weird possum thing." So I went out, and there was like a rail coming down. There was like a big barbecue area. It was all on this big deck, and it came down. It was sort of walking hand over hand on all fours. And we were looking at it, and it looked like a strange koala, sort of, but bigger than a koala possum hybrid thing. And we were going, what is that? And it came right in, and it just jumped down, and then it just stood in front of us on 2 legs. And it looked like a shafaka. And it was sort of a brown sort of tawny color, but it had like a white chest. And it started doing this dance with its arms and legs in front of us. And it had a big muzzle, so it had like prognathism, and I'd never seen anything like it. We estimated it was about 3.5 feet tall, maybe just over a meter. So it was big, and it was just standing there dancing in front of us. And we'd been videoing and doing audio all night, you know, looking at the stars and doing everything and nothing. And we just stood there and we're just looking at it going, oh, this is amazing. We didn't go and pick up a camera. We didn't pick up our phone. We didn't pick up anything. We just stood there, and it was doing this dance in front of us, and it was using its tail. It had a big long tail, like a stiff tail. So, and it was using that as if it was standing. So it was doing with all fours, like literally jazz hands dance. And we were just like, what is this? And we were just laughing at it and looking. And, you know, I'm an anthropologist and a biologist, and I still had never seen anything like this. The nearest I could say is like a shafaka, like a lemur that walks on its leg. And anyway, it was just dancing and things. And we just turned around and went back into the room and went to bed and just went straight to sleep. Now, that's unheard of. I never do that anyway. I never go straight to sleep. And so then I woke up I think it was probably about 2 in the morning, something like that. And I thought, oh, I'll check the sky again, you know. Then I thought, did I just have a really strange dream? So I woke Steve up and I said, did I have a dream about this strange creature? And he's like, oh no, that happened. So we went outside to see if it was there. Of course it wasn't. Beautiful stars and everything. And then we sort of realized how weird that was, that we'd been calling in these aliens and nothing had, you know, and then we'd just turned around and gone in. We'd not got the first thing I do whenever anything weird's happening is try and get it on camera, film, audio, whatever. And we had everything. It was all just set out on the table right at the door. And we didn't do it. And it was like we'd had this strange experience. And we stayed out for at least another couple of hours looking at the stars and just discussing how weird that was. And even in the morning when we got up, we asked the people that were there if there was anything strange, any strange animals or anything. We looked up, you know, all the different animals, and of course there was nothing like that. And it was just so bizarre for someone like me to not grab a camera and then just to turn away and walk away. And there was no telepathy or anything, but it was like it was sort of happy to see us and performing, and it seemed like an intelligent thing, which is a strange thing to say when it's doing jazz hands at me, but it was like going, hey, look at me, and it wasn't fearful of us or any, and it was so close. It was probably 2 feet away from us, if that. I mean, right in front of us. It was standing here, right in front of us. It was incredible, and we were just like, oh yeah, this is really cool.
Wow. Last time I checked, we don't have any of those types of animals.
No. I went everywhere, looked at every possible thing, and the nearest is definitely a shifaga, which are about the same size, same sort of lope, the way that it walked, everything about it. So so whether it was one of the aliens came down to see us and it tried a terrestrial form out or what, I have no idea. But that was such a weird one.
That's bizarre. And your partner saw the same thing. He described the same thing.
Exactly. I mean, because when I woke up, I thought, oh, it must have been a dream, because I went straight out to look at the stars and I hadn't even thought about it. And then I was like, oh, and so I went and grabbed him and said, did he say, yeah, that really happened? Wow, that was so weird. What a strange thing for 2 of us to have such a strange behavior. So it was like we were sort of hypnotized or mesmerized or something, and then just sort of turn around and walk away from this unknown creature.
Yeah, that's so typical of people who see things like that, like people who see UFOs, I know for sure. They just, you know, they can just go, oh, that's interesting, and then go off and go inside and carry on as if they'd never seen anything, like, you know, nothing had happened. Has that ever happened to you, Barry?
What's that?
That you saw something and then just sort of, you know, shrugged it off and behaved abnormally?
No, I don't think so, because I'd be outside specifically looking for them, and I'd half the time expecting to see something like that. But I'd observe them for as long as I could. But I know exactly what Jem's talking about when you got a camera in a camera in your hand, and you don't film them when they're up close. I've had that, you know, more than enough times with UFOs. But and if you see something, you got a camera handy, you don't even go and dive and get it, you know, because something happens. And I think Jem may have been under a bit of a hypnosis thing there from this object or this creature, and he certainly sounds like he had control of his, that's for sure.
So did you feel that, Jem? Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, we were compass mentis because we were commenting on it. We were saying, oh, this is weird, you know, oh, he's doing a dance, oh, how cute. And I'm going, what is it though? I've never seen anything like this before. So we were discussing it in real time at that time. So we weren't that stupid, but we were because we just did not go into I mean, my camera was probably 3 or 4 feet away. And I could have just picked it up and taken some photos, taken some video, done anything, you know. It tried to interact with it better. We didn't even talk to it. We were just sort of watching it and discussing it between us.
Did you feel like you could move? Did you feel like you could move? Like, or was it like you were, so you weren't frozen to the spot?
we actually approached it because it jumped down and it was sort of dancing, and we approached it and we were standing, as I say, only a few feet away from it, 2-3 feet at the most. It was right next to us. And we weren't fearful or anything. We were just sort of laughing about it, smiling and enjoying the experience. But,
did it leave any tracks at all? Or was it like on the ground or on concrete?
No, because it was a beautiful night, you know, and it was a cold night, but there was nothing. We looked everywhere the next day to see if there was any tracks, because it had been on the deck, so it was a wooden deck where it had come down to. But up at the top where it had come down, there was nothing, because there were like loads of possums in the trees and all sorts all the time, but nothing like that. It was just so bizarre. One of those experiences.
When you saw it, what was happening in the environment? Like, I guess at that time of night, other animals would be fairly quiet too. Did you hear anything else?
Well, we'd been hearing, as I say, possums and all sorts all over the place. There were loads of insects, because it was in like this whole wilderness area, and there was a few cabins, but ours was like a double cabin with a big thing in between, a big deck and the bath outside and everything. So we were just at one with nature. It was just incredible that we just, I don't know, we just, I mean, I kick myself about it, as in many other experiences where I just go, what? I mean, I don't know if you're talking about strange creatures, aren't you? So we've got the creature at the end of the bed. I know Barry's had the same sort of experience. Have you talked about that yet?
The little creature in my bedroom.
Yeah,
I have, yes.
So I had the same sort of experience. So I was living in Cooma at the time in the Snowy Mountains, and I had a bed rail on the end of my bed, and it was a big window behind it, and it was upstairs, and there was no access to that window. And nearly every night, this creature, which was probably about a foot tall, and it was like a little gremlin, but it was a little man, and it had clothes on, and it had a green face and like a big nose and big ears, and he would just sit on the end of the bed and just watch me, and he would like smile and things like that. I just thought I was having, you know, hallucinations when I was waking up and things, and you know, it was always like sort of maybe 1-2 in the morning. And I had mentioned it to my husband at the time and said, and he'd just been like, yeah, whatever. But it was quite frequent. It was nearly every night. Anyway, I had my children were downstairs, and sometimes my little girl would be in bed with me. One of my little girls would come into bed with me, as they do. And I'd never mentioned this to the children, obviously. And one day she was only probably 2 or 3 at the most at that time, maybe 4. Not even that. And we watched a movie, and it had like gremlins in and stuff. And she said, something like, that's like the little man on the end of the bed. And I'd gone, what? And she was like, you know, the man that comes with his wife and he sits on the end of your bed. And I just was horrified that she was seeing the same thing. And I was saying, oh, really? You know, because obviously little kids, and she's saying, oh, yes. And he wears little clothes. And he takes me, when you go back to sleep, he takes me and wanders around the house with me and shows me things. And I'm like, what? And this little creature that had not, he just smiled. He'd never talked to me. He just sat there and smiled. And, you know, and I thought, maybe he's like a little guardian or something. And it was weird, but I'd never tried to photograph him either. I'd never tried to do anything. I'd said hello a few times, but he'd just smile at me. But then when my daughter said that she'd had this, that she was seeing him, but he brought his wife with her, which I'd never seen. He said sometimes his wife would sit on the end of the bed post next to him. And these sort of things are just like, it was sort of verification. So I asked my other daughter, she'd never seen it. But this was my middle daughter and she said she saw him a lot, and he used to take her around and I said, did you used to see him? Like, did he used to come to your bedroom? Because obviously I was getting worried then. She's like, no, it was only when it was at your room. And often, and then sometimes I would see him just turn around and he'd just go straight out through the window, just like fly through the window. And I'd said, have you seen any, how he comes or goes? She goes, oh yeah, he just comes straight through the window, him and his wife or whatever, and then they just fly off again. So he didn't even dematerialize. He would literally fly through the window. It was so, there's another one. But again, you just think, oh, maybe I'm having a hypnopompic experience as I'm waking up, some sort of strange thing. But no, she was having the same thing exactly. And we could both describe it exactly. That was the weird thing.
Yeah. So I know you've worked as a sleep scientist. Those hypnopompic experiences, when exactly do they happen? Because a lot of people do report, can report seeing things at that particular time.
Yep, well, you can have either hypnagogic, so when you're going to sleep, or hypnopompic when you have a wake, because you have many, many wakes through your cycles. If you wake just around sort of REM, just after REM sleep, which is quite common, you can still have all the experiences of not being able to move, etc. Because obviously your body's controlled and things. And you can have some strange experience. You can have audible experiences. You can have the hypnic jerk when you're going to sleep. Where you do that. That's very, very common. That's all about your body getting ready to sleep or getting ready to go back to sleep again when you have this paralysis or whatever. So I just assumed that was, read all about it. I knew all about it before. So I just assumed it was something like that. And I mean, saying weird things about sleep. Just 2 nights ago, I woke up and I often have like these mechanical spiders. I've talked about them before. It was a scarab this time, and I've had that a couple of times. I woke up, lying in my bed, look up, and there's a scarab beetle about this big, literally just floating over my head again. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go again. And it's just there, and it's a scarab beetle. And I'm going, all right, okay, that's nice, that's interesting. And then I try and touch it, and I've actually touched some of them before, but this one just sort of floated up, and it just sort of hovered near the air conditioner above me, and then just faded out again. But it was a scarab. So often you have these experiences, and you as a sleep scientist, you would definitely say, oh, that's just a hypnopompic experience, blah blah blah. But I've actually been able to hit them before, and I've talked to other people around the world and interviewed people, and they've had those sorts of experiences as well. So I do think that there's something more to it. It feels like it's observing you because they have whatever it is, the object, it has a startle reflex when it realizes you're awake, which it shouldn't, obviously, if you're, if it's just a manifestation. And then often it'll just fade away, or it might even move. If you're trying to touch it, it'll move, and it has substance. So they do have substance. I've had a fairy appear next to me and all sorts. I know, yes, it makes me sound absolutely crazy, and I know exactly how it makes me sound. I'm being honest, you may as well be honest as a scientist of the experiences you have. Otherwise, what's the point? Because other people do have these. And it could be attributed to that, but these sort of things. So I assumed that the man at the end of the bed was one of those experiences but he would come in batches. So it sounds a bit like abduction type experiences where maybe for a month or 2, he would be there nearly every night. And then I wouldn't see him for a few months, and then he'd come back. And I've never had him anywhere else, only there in Cooma, which is really unusual because the experiences when I wake up, the other scarab beetles or whatever, the spiders, that's happened all my life. So, but yeah, that one seemed to be specific to that area. So it's fascinating.
So when you would see him, and it's like, I'll call him the hobgoblin, for example. So would it sort of like wake up, see him, and just see him for a shorter period of time, or could you sit there and look at him for 5 or 10 minutes, and he just sits there?
Easily. I could sit up in bed, and he'd just be smiling at me. Yeah. And I remember I've leaned forward and tried to touch him a few times, and then he would just turn around and just maybe shake his head or whatever, and then just go. I mean, he looked like a leprechaun, a little leprechaun, a little goblin, and he was in clothes. But the bizarre. He was dressed in clothes, and he had like a greenish skin and a big nose and big ears, like I said. and quite scary to look at. But his attitude was just like, I'm the cheeky chappy type leprechaun type thing, you know. But he never said. And there was probably telepathy in the sense that he was just saying, hello, yes, it's me again type of thing. But he never said anything to me. But Jade, my daughter, said that he'd talk to her and show her things and all sorts. So, I mean, I didn't like that.
Bizarre. Bizarre. I mean, you've had so many experiences, just like Barry, actually. Why do you think, Barry, that some people have these experiences over and over and over again, like many in their lifetime, and others never have one or never report them? Yeah.
I think like Gem and I, just for two people that we know close at hand, I think our experiences started as young children. And whether it's something that's happened when we were a child or something in a past life or whatever, I don't know. But we become aware of our surroundings, and Jem would have become aware of space and planets and all that at a very young age, like I did. And you just grow up with this extra knowledge of more than just what you see around you. And I think once you start seeing critters or creatures or UFOs or whatever, and you respond, and they seem, obviously there's a mental connection somewhere around the consciousness. And I think once they pick up on your consciousness, I think that they will then come back and know that you're not afraid of them, and they'll show themselves to you, and you'll have amazing dreams because of it. And I think they probably take a fingerprint of that person, like photographing or recording the aura of that person. And then they put that probably in a database where I know for a fact that UFOs in a totally different location can notice you and come back and pay attention to you as if words got around, or I'm in their database type thing, you know. So no matter where you go in the world, you'll still get these things happening to you. What do you reckon, Jim?
Yep. As disturbing as it sounds, I definitely think so, because having moved from England, the experiences still kept coming. You know, I moved all the way from the UK to Australia and to Sydney, and I thought, that'll probably all stop now. You know, it might be something to do with being in your home country and whatever. But even when I've been on holiday in all sorts of places around the world, I've had strange things. I've had especially things at night. There's another one that I wanted to quickly mention, if that's all right, which which I've had twice. It was on Mount Glorious, and I was sitting with a friend, and we were doing now she was quite a nervous person, but we were just doing, again, looking at UFOs and looking for UFOs and stuff. And it's at that Myala place where I had a UFO experience. So she'd wanted to have a UFO experience. So I took her up there, and we were sitting there, and it was really late. It was probably 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and just two of us sitting there. And it's right next to the forest. It's the big picnic area, and it's got a big area of grass. And it's right next to this forest, which has a really strange feeling about it every time we go in. And we were sitting there, and as it gets cold, this sort of mist comes down and it settles down. And we were just chatting about this and that, but we could still see all the stars. But then everything seemed to change, and it seemed to stop. This is what often happens, is everything sort of stops and shifts, as if time's stopped or time's changed or something. And both of us felt it. And I was like, oh, this feels like something's going to happen. Maybe there'll be a UFO. But instead, the mist started parting near the actual forest entrance, and this black creature started crawling towards us. And it was big. It was like the size of probably a big dog, like a big Alsatian or something. But it didn't move like an Alsatian. Its legs went backwards instead of forwards. It was the opposite way. And it had sort of a strange muzzle, and it was obviously dark, and we're looking at it through this mist, and it was sort of creeping around, and it was coming towards us. And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to scare my friend, but I also wanted to see if she saw it as well, you know, if she could experience it. So I'm sitting there feeling very uneasy, because it was probably, I don't know, 50 meters away at this time, but I was starting to worry because I knew it was definitely not a normal animal. And she suddenly went, "What's that?" And she could see it, and I said, "What is it? What is it?" And she was going, "Oh, it's like a black creature and it's coming towards us." And I'm like, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm seeing too." And she was terrified, and she's like, "I'm never coming out with you again. Every time I come out with you, I have weird experiences." And so what we did was I jumped up and I just went, "Go, go." And it just sort of looked up, and it again sort of reared up. And then it just turned and went, because it was sort of observing us. And I was wondering that maybe our thought forms had manifested some creature, even though we were trying to, again, call in the aliens, call in the UFOs. This creature had appeared from the forest, and maybe because of the way our thought patterns or something, it had actually lured some creature that normally lives in there. Because I know that, it's definitely a land of wonderment in there. There's some strange stuff lives in that ancient forest. It's the ancient forests there. And it was getting, she was, because I wanted to go look. She's like, "No, get back in the car." So straight down. She wouldn't come out with me ever again. So that was a strange one. And my dad and I had a very similar experience at Chillingham Castle, where we were outside in this. I've stayed in this haunted castle many times, but we were on a ghost tour, and it's a big castle with 4 walls. We were inside, and we're at the top, and there's a big green that goes down to the wall, and then there's like an entrance to the wall, and it goes to the hanging trees where all the people were hung by the trees, monks and everything. A hideous place full of death, and there's bones sticking out the ground still and everything. So we were on this ghost tour, and we were just standing there, and they were talking about this cannon that was nearby, and my dad suddenly said, "What's that?" And this big black thing came running up, and it just came running at us like a hound of the Baskervilles type creature, came running at us, and we knew it wasn't a dog because of the way it was moving. Again, it was exactly the same sort of movement, and then it just sort of faded and disappeared as it approached us. And I looked at my dad and I said, "What did you just see?" He said it was like a massive black dog, but it wasn't a dog. And I was like, "Yep, that's exactly what I saw." And when I saw this one here, it was very similar. It reminded me of this same thing. And again, we were there, and we're thinking, great, we're on a ghost tour. We want something strange to happen. And my dad's weird like me. He's had lots of strange UFO experiences and things. So again, we were sort of inviting something to happen. Maybe we manifested it. Who knows? But that wasn't what I was thinking of manifesting, but that's what came. And so 2 similar times with that as well.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
I've had so many of these experiences, and people have to keep reminding me about them all, because there are so many of all sorts of different things.
It's almost like a Skinwalker Ranch type of a creature, isn't it?
Well, I watched this. I hadn't seen Skinwalker about that then at that time, but I've seen it, and it is very similar, except it's all black, and it is very strange creature, and it didn't have glowing red eyes or anything like that, but it was very malevolent feeling. It was something you did not want to hang around. It was it felt like an ancient spirit, an ancient being, and really primal. It was, and both times it felt the same. And I told my dad about it being here, and he's like, "Wow, that's amazing. They're in Queensland. Maybe you brought it with you." And I was like, "No, I hope not. I don't want to bring that."
Like gargoyles, creatures of the night.
So maybe if you go out to these places with intention, you may not even know what you're going to attract.
Well, that's exactly what I say. And when I take people places now, definitely, I do warn them that you might not just see a UFO. There might be something really strange happens to you, and it might be life-changing. It might. To me, it's not, obviously, because I've been seeing these things all my life and having weird experiences and thought it was normal as a child, thought it was totally normal. But, some people can get really disturbed by it, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
What a strange collection that you two have between you of really weird creatures and experiences.
I think you've given our subscribers something to think about.
Yeah.
I hope so. Well, if anybody's had any of those sorts of experiences, I'd love to hear about it as well. Especially the experiences at night with the spiders, the mechanical spiders, or little cameras, little floating black boxes. all sorts of different things it takes forms in, scarab beetles, those sorts of things.
It just shows you that there's another dimension not too far away from this one, isn't it?
Well, I think it's always here. It's just we obviously we can take our filters off a lot easier, I think.
Yeah.
I think they're always here.
The veil is very thin.
Yeah. Well, look, my cat's always looking at stuff around this area, and I can't see it. And I'm thinking, why can't I see it? Because I can see everything else. What are you looking at? So I think that a lot of animals have that filter removed constantly, and we just, you know, maybe it's a survival mechanism, like so we can cope.
But when my mum was ready to pass, I looked after her to her last days. One morning I went into her room and she said, "See those coloured orbs up there? Are they real?" And I looked up, I couldn't see anything. I said, "Yes, Mum, they are real, but only you can see them. They're here for you."
Yeah.
And she took that on board.
Yeah, very
In
interesting.
the last days, and saw hooded beings.
Yeah, now the hooded beings, a lot of people I've talked to who are near death, they've seen the same thing. They're the things you don't want to be seeing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how thin the veil is. These creatures, as we call them, or entities, are there all the time, as you say, Jem, but under certain circumstances, they'll take form and we'll be able to see them in real life, you know.
Wow. Thank you both so much for sharing those experiences.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's been great having you on. And I actually think that what you guys have described is quite unique. I haven't heard a lot of those experiences before.
No, never at all. I've not heard anything like it.
I don't want to. Okay, so everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and remember to tap the bell so you get the notifications of when we upload the next episode. So thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.